everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I guess this afternoon or this evening, depending on where you are. But we are excited to come to you and bring you BSB Recommends, which is a pretty cool panel, in my opinion, because it gives us a chance to talk with some authors about some of the books they've been exploring. And if you think about it, it's almost like a six-way book club where you get access to some recommends beyond just one book. And so that's what we will be delving into today. And rather than read off some bios for the panelists that I have here, who you may be very well familiar with or not, I'm just going to have them say hello and introduce themselves to you briefly. And I'm going to toss it to Allie first.
Oh, I'm Vali, and I think I'm on book 30 or so. Kane Casey is the next one coming up, but I think there's a lot of people waiting for that one, but that's me.
I think so. Thanks for joining us. Carsen.
Hi, my name's Carsen Taite. I write romantic suspense and contemporary romance, and I'm catching up to you, Allie. I'm like book 25-ish or something. I just hold you back and I'll get ahead.
And Kris.
I'm Kris Bryant, and I'm nowhere close to where they are. I'm in the teens. I write contemporary romance, and I live in Kansas City.
Awesome. Georgia.
I am Georgia Beers. I am in upstate New York. I am running right alongside of Carsen, trying to catch Allie with my 26th book. I write contemporary romance, and I am psyched for this panel. This is going to be fun.
Great. Glad you are here. D. Jackson.
I'm D. Jackson Leigh, and I'm in transition from living in North Carolina to moving back to my home state of Georgia. And I've my most recent book, which I believe is about number 14, came out yesterday, Blades of Bluegrass. And I write primarily romance, contemporary romance, and my trademark is that except for one of those books, I write in equestrian settings and with a little Southern humor. I've also ventured into the fantasy genre and written a trilogy called Dragon Horse War, which is a sort of a social commentary and fantasy with dragon horses in it.
Awesome. And Radclyffe, we'll pretend no one knows who you are, but go ahead and tell us.
Hi, everybody. I write a little bit of everything. This is my most recent one, Love on the Night Shift, which is one of the Rivers community romances. Came out in May. It's number 60-something, 61, I think. Wow. I am about to finish Treacherous Seas, which is number 11 in the Provincetown Tales. And in September, I am bringing out a compilation, 2 novellas in the Midnight Hunter series, which will be out in print together. Rogue Hunt came out last fall, and Enchanted Hunt, which is new, will be out in September in ebook, and they will both be out in a paperback edition.
Awesome. Well, we're happy all of you are here. You've given us some fun things to look forward to. But one of the great things about all of you is I know that in addition to being fantastic writers, you're also avid readers, which is what brings us all together today. And so for our discussion, I know that you each have selected a book to discuss and tell us why you're recommending it. So what we'll do is let's go around. Tell us what book you selected and why you selected that particular book. And Carsen, I'm going to go to you first.
Okay, so I selected Moon Fever by Leandra Young. It's the second book in the Spear and Mission Files series. This first book is both ways. I selected it for 2 reasons. One, the main reason I selected it is because I wanted to try something outside my genre. I read the first book a while back when it came out. I met Leandra in the UK at our fiction festival in 2018 and was really impressed by her. And I think it was right before her book came out that I met her. I wanted to try something outside my usual genre of reading, and I also wanted to read something by an author of color and elevate that voice because I think it's important for all of us to read other things besides what we write ourselves.
Great point. Glad you did that. Radclyffe, what did you choose?
I chose Aaron Dutton's most recent release, 3 Alarm Response, for the opposite reason from Carsen, although not quite. I love first responders. Obviously, I write first responders, and I'm one of those people that likes to read what I write. I read a lot of things that I don't write, which I wish I could write. But I was particularly interested when you get to ask us about structure, because this is a differently structured book, and I wanted to see how she put it together and how it worked. And I'll tell you later.
All right. Georgia, what's your book tonight?
I don't have a picture of it because it's on my Kindle, and my Kindle is tiny and black and white. So I'm not going to show it to you, but I chose Death Overdue by David, and I don't know if it's Peterson or Pedersen. I've heard it spoken both ways, so I apologize. I'm just going to call him Dave because he's my buddy now.
Okay.
I wanted to read something different. This is it's a kind of a noir detective, hard-boiled detective mystery that takes place in the 40s. And I have watched many a movie in that setting, but I've never read anything in that setting. I'm not, historical fiction is not my go-to. So again, like Carsen said, I wanted to read something different than I usually read. And I was also kind of excited to read about gay men, because I don't do that very often either. So I have a lot to say about it. I really enjoyed it.
All right. Something new is always a little bit fun. D. Jackson, what are you reading?
I read The Last Days of Autumn, and I don't know if you can see that.
We got it.
Yep. From Donna K. Ford. Donna's a friend of mine, but that's not why I read the book. I read it because it's about a woman who's going through cancer, and she hires another woman to be her companion to help her through the chemo treatments and everything. And it seems like all of a sudden I know a lot of people, 2, 3 co-workers, and a couple of writer friends who have also been through similar things. Donna wrote the book because a friend of hers, a close friend of hers, went through colon cancer and treatments for this, and she handles it very well. And it's a really good book and a very sensitive handling of that. And I was very interested in reading it. I've recommended it to several people who have also had people close to them go through this.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm glad for those reasons. I'm thrilled that you chose the book as well. If those of you joining us on Zoom and you're able to see the chat feature off to the right, we won't see this on Facebook Live, but if you're on Zoom, you'll see the links to the books popping up as we're talking about them. Keep tabs over there. Kris, what did you read?
I picked Serenity. There's the picture. By Jessie Tama. And I picked it because I did meet her for the first time at Pride a couple of years ago in Boston. And she writes some pretty heavy books. And this is about a heroine, a drug addict who's in recovery. And so it's very, very heavy, and it's not normally what I read. And so I wanted it exposed me to a completely different world that I know nothing of. And, I don't know anybody who is an addict, at least openly an addict. And so it was a very heavy and a very good book.
Awesome. Well, we look forward to hearing more about that. And Allie, lastly, what book did you choose?
I picked First Do No Harm. And it just, wait, here we go. First Do No Harm by Emily Smith. It's kind of set in a medical drama. I love medical romances. Fated Love is... Brad still needs to write some more about those people. So, book 61, Rad, book 61. So, but it was a great book. It actually touched on some characters from a previous book. So that's always kind of fun when you get to revisit characters that you read and you love about. And it's set in a, very fast pace in Boston, and in an emergency room is where the characters meet. So those are always really fun and then to be able to build a romance in that is always kind of a challenge, I would think. And she did a really good job on that.
Okay, so we got our lineup. We know the 6 books that we're dealing with. If you're on Zoom, you have them off to the side. But let's delve a little bit further. And Rad alluded to talking about the structure of each of the books. So Rad, I'll go to you first. Structurally, how is 3 Alarm Response told?
Well, the thing that's really interesting about it, and the reason that I really wanted to read it, is that it's 3 connected novellas. So there are 6 characters who, in real life, in the fictional life of the community, know each other. And they all are involved in first response in different ways. There are firefighters and paramedics and police officers, and also some other people who are similarly related to community care. And they bump into each other in each of the novellas. So each is a standalone romance, which is pretty tough to do in a novella. And each is connected to the other stories because they know each other. So it's from an authorial point of view, it's really challenging to do. Number one, to write a really good romance novella, because it takes a lot of time to create a romance and one that's believable, and to condense it into a novella form, and then to connect the 3 stories so that they make sense and they could be read individually. So, I mean, it's really a tour de force in terms of using short form in a new way. And I think it's something that's becoming a lot more popular now. I mean, we're doing a lot more novella anthologies, and readers seem to really like them. I think it might be a symbol of the time that sometimes we just want a good read and we want to sit down and read it beginning to end, and novellas work well that way. So that's the structure of the story.
That is an interesting point. I wonder if it has to do with just how time is of the essence, and we're doing so many different things that novellas are really coming into their own, and more popular. So that's an interesting point. I also like the word authorial, and I'm going to need to use that more. I will say on that. Georgia, can you talk to us about the structure for Death Overdue?
Yes, Death Overdue takes place in a fairly short time period. I think it's a week. It might be a little bit longer than a week. I'm not 100% sure about that, but each chapter opens as Monday, August, whatever, at whatever time it is. And this takes place in Milwaukee in August, which is crazy humid in the book. And while I was reading it, it was crazy humid here. So it was even easier for me to relate to this character. But we follow Detective Heath Barrington through his daily life. He is a detective with the Milwaukee Police Department, and he has a boyfriend who is a beat cop, and nobody knows about that because we're in 1947. That was also an interesting thing for me to take in and kind of chew on. Is they're very chaste. They don't touch each other. They hardly whisper sweet nothings because it's 1947 and they're cops and they have to be careful. But structurally, it takes place in a fairly limited part of the city, and you kind of get to know the area as the book goes along. Oh, he's going to that restaurant again. I remember that's across from this. Like, he sets the city up, or the part of the city that we're in, really, really well. So it was very easy to figure out where I was and where he was going. I could see the apartment buildings and I could smell the smells of the city. It's just, he did a really nice job laying it out. I felt like I was there. I felt like I was walking around with his main character.
Awesome. All right, D. Jackson, for The Last Days of Autumn, I mean, structurally, point of view wise, linear storytelling, how is it set up?
I thought that Donna did a really good job with it. She and her editor Ruth worked really well together. Donna never shies away from handling some hard topics, but she handles them with a very light touch. And so she writes romances. There's 2 romances, and they're still happy ending. I know the title says, and I don't want to give anything away, but I don't want people to not buy it because this is The Last Days of Autumn. It's it still has a happy ending, okay? So don't shy away from it, because, like, I won't watch movies where I think the dog's going to die in the end. I won't watch any movie that's about a dog. I've seen too many that I get suckered into watching, and the dog died in the end, and then I was mad. So you can still read this. It has a happy ending, but she's very carefully structures the way that Autumn Landers chooses. She owns a business, and she makes choices between how she depends on. She has to divide her responsibilities that she can't handle while she's undergoing this treatment. She's very sick. What she asks of her friends, and what she would prefer to have this person that she has just advertised for a caregiver, somebody who's not that close to her, to help her with things that can be very personal, and her friends don't understand why. So she lays out the relationship of what her main character is thinking, and then the relationship, how she becomes so connected with her caregiver and what the caregiver is thinking, and it really gives you a lot of understanding of what people go through, and what the people around them go through, and I thought it's very cleanly laid out. It doesn't get confusing and all tangled up. It's very plain, linear story.
Good. Well, it sounds like it's a heartfelt telling that we can all rest assured we'll have a happy ending, which is good for us to know going in that we're going to be taking for sure. Allie, on First Do No Harm, can you talk to us about the structure of that novel?
Yeah, actually, the book starts in Atlanta, where the main character Pierce, who's a physician's assistant, she's dating like the bitchiest woman ever to live, and this woman like totally breaks her heart. And so she's kind of in a bad place, and so she decides not only to kind of start over in her love life, but also start over in a new city. So she moves to Boston, where her cousin who's a character from a previous book, is a surgeon and is dating another surgeon who was one of her residents actually. And so she helps her get a job at the emergency room in the hospital there in Boston, and she starts over. And I think one of the things that was kind of interesting, and I think we've touched on this on some other topics, is when she gets there, obviously she is not she's a butch, and she's a strong woman, she's pulling herself up by her bootstraps, but she meets Dr. Cassidy Sullivan, and she is very femme. And so you got to kind of dance around the question of, is she or is she not gay? And can I make a pass at this one? Because she's totally hot. So, that should never stop you.
Very good.
So you have, that's on one side of it. So she's kind of starting over. She's starting with online dating, which that was not around when I was dating. Thank the Lord, because I kind of, you see that, and it's kind of an interesting thing. I have some friends who got married, and they've been happily married for like 10 years now, and that's where they met. I always think if you meet somebody on the internet, they might cut you up in little tiny pieces in your bathtub, but that's only me. But on the other side, you have Dr. Cassidy Sullivan, who is a resident in the emergency room. She is got a lot of secrets. She's kind of skittish when it comes to love because of those secrets. And then when those secrets come to head, then that's when the angst begins. But Emily put together a really, really good book. It's a mixture of the medical and the romance, and how sometimes things don't work out, but kind of like what DJ said, they do work out. So make sure you read the book. And then really, if you really want to enjoy it, read the one prior to that, All of Me, and you'll enjoy it that much more because you'll get to know the characters that much better.
Awesome. I like the way that they link together, and the two books work hand in hand. So I think that's a great thing to point out to our audience, that if you do like that book, there's another one for you to pick up as well. Carsen, Moon Fever, talk to us about the structure.
So this book features Danica Larson. She's a field agent for the SPEAR agency, which is the Supernatural Prohibition Extermination Arrest Regiment. And basically, she keeps bad behaving supernaturals in line. And it's a world where supernaturals and humans are living out in the, supernatural beings are living out in the open. But there's still a little, hesitancy on the part of humans to accept them, and very interesting, raises a lot of issues that are very pertinent to our times. But structurally, it's told in the first person from Danica's point of view, and she's a total badass and a bit of a mess. So those are my favorite kind of characters, because they're just not clean. There's a lot going on there. It is the second book in the series, but the plot is self-contained. You can jump right into this one, but it's a richer experience if you have read the first one. So I always recommend jumping into the first one first. Why not buy both of them, since I think you may get a discount for spending more money at the Bold Strokes website. But it's very, very action-packed. Like in the first book, you're dropped right in the action. In the second book, same thing. And so you need to block out some time to read this, because you're not going to want to put it down.
Well, I too am a sucker for a good first-person flawed character narrative, and so just take note of the fact it is a second book in a series. But from what Carsen says, you can read it beginning, middle, and end, and have a self-contained story. So you get both options of reading both books or just picking up this one, either one. Kris, lastly, talk to us about Serenity and the structure of that book.
The structure, it's third person, and it alternates between the two characters. And it's kind of like what Georgia was saying. It takes place, majority of it takes place in the library, the town library, and you kind of get to know the neighborhood based on where the characters go. And so that was kind of interesting. So I got to know, they're going to walk here, and they do a lot of walking. So everything is very small. It's very small knit community, and it's so interesting because I write the little fluffy, very low angst characters, and I like jump into this, like the very first scene, you're just like, what is happening? Because it's so intense, and I'm not used to that. And so it starts off with a lot of angst, and the whole book has a lot of it, and everybody dealing with their own issues with drug use, or what has happened in their history with drug use. So, yeah, well, I'm sure we're going to get more into the details, but structure-wise, third person, very small area. You get to know the neighborhood, like what Georgia read, and you get to know the characters, very interesting characters in this book.
It sounds like a good one. It's making me want to read it as well, just kind of imagining that setting that's so vivid that you're describing.
And at a library.
Yeah, library.
For the library. My next question was to say, give us a brief summary of the book. And some of you have already started down that path and talked to us about what it's about. But if we were to distill it down and you were just to, give a quick elevator speech to somebody that would be short in nature, what is this book about? What's the crux of it, Carsen?
So Danica is this agent, and she's just been promoted. Her girlfriend is a vampire, which, as you can imagine, raises problems. One of her really good friends is a direwolf alpha who's just been dethroned from her pack. And so there's all sorts of things brewing. Her girlfriend's going through some things that are causing some, vampire desires, which kind of makes it hard to be with a human. She's trying to help out her werewolf friend. There's just a lot going on there, and I would love to tell you more, but there's so many spoilers. But yeah. It is an action-packed adventure, and it's also a great character journey. So
no, I think that's a great soundbite right there without having to spoil anything. Rad, so you have the novella structure, so it's maybe harder for you to offer a brief summary, but what can you say that these novellas are about?
Well, it's it's not one single story,
Mhm.
but it's 3 interconnected stories with a group of interconnected characters. So if you enjoy visiting characters and revisiting characters in another story, this works really well. If you enjoy action-packed scenes within your romances, perfect, because each of the novellas centers on a first response, a fire, an auto accident, or some other basically crisis, which allows you to see the characters in action and the impact of those events on the characters' lives, so that you get to see she's able to develop characters through showing them doing what they do and the repercussions, which I think in today's world is pretty poignant, of doing what they do. And that enables her to develop really rich characters in a short period of time and create a believable romance, because I think when you have a crisis situation, emotions are very high and things get revealed and exposed in ways that they don't when you're in the library for 2 weeks or wherever. I'm being facetious there, but I mean, it's not a talky kind of romance development. It's a romance that's developed around action scenes that impact the characters. So if that's the kind of thing that you like to read, you've got it in triplicate.
Yeah, it sounds very high stakes, and I do like that you say that they overlap with those characters represented across the board, which is pretty cool. Kris, we heard about the setting and the structure, but what's actually the plot point of Serenity?
Okay, so we have a character. Her name is Kit Marsden. I think I pronounced that right. Marsden. And she is an ex-heroin user. And their NA, the Narcotics Anonymous meetings, take place at the library. So she's racing into the library after work, and she runs into one of the librarians. And they kind of have a history, sort of, a real quick history. And so they just kind of develop a relationship, and you see people trying to figure out how to find love, when you have issues really big as like drug use, past drug use, and people in your past who have drug use. So it's kind of their relationship, trying to figure out how to make it work. And is it worth making it work? And is this really love?
It sounds very human, in fact.
It's very realistic, and no spear or anything like that. It's strictly, it's like very emotional. It's very raw, and it gets down to the nitty gritty. And there are some like support characters that really bring humor to it, but I mean that's a serious topic, and I think that Jessie did a really good job. And it takes place it starts off probably. The whole book from the very beginning to the end is about 2 years, but I think the epilogue is like a year out. The epilogue is a year out. So you get to learn these characters in the 1 year.
Awesome. I like that. I like that time span as well. Allie, I'm going to go to you next. Talk to me about the plot.
The plot, like I said, it starts with the bad breakup. Mm-hmm. And then so you kind of get in this character's head, and I think we've all been there, where you're not in a good place. And especially if you're moving, not only do you lose your girlfriend, but you're moving to another city. So she's in the city and she's lonely, and she really just has her cousin who she hasn't really been close to in a very long time. So they have to kind of build that relationship as well. Mm-hmm. But she starts a new job, gets a new apartment, and she is online, and she's starting to set up some dates, and they're all kind of lackluster. That it's never that zing, that that connection that you want to have with someone. So she's kind of seeing what her cousin has, like I said, the characters from the other book, and that she has found love. She has found that picket fence, even though it's a condo on the very top floor in Boston. So there's no picket fence. There's an elevator. But anyway, she wants that. She wants that connection with someone, to share her life with someone. And then until she meets Dr. Cassidy, it doesn't start to believe it. All the dates that she's had, she's not seeing it. It's really not a good connection with anyone. She meets this doctor, though, and then it does build a great relationship. But when you start dating someone who doesn't share all of themselves with you, that does cause some problems. So I'm not going to give it away, but there's some problems.
Look, to find out. T-Tax, you talked to us a little bit already about the plot for The Last Days of Autumn, but if you were to distill it down, what's this book about?
The romance in the book is that Autumn Landers she owns a landscape business, and it's a really busy time of year. Her business is taken off. She has a close friend who's like her second in command in the business that handles the one person she trusts to handle some projects while she does some others. She's like a landscape architect, and then she finds out this devastating thing that she's got cancer, and she needs to immediately start these treatments. And her mother comes around, but she just can't. Their relationship is just she just can't tolerate. Her mother's all glittery and everything, and not somebody good to have around to take care of you. She's more work than she is help, And so she decides to hire a caregiver to help her through the chemo and everything, because her good friend needs to be running her business for her while she's sick. And so she hires Carolyn Cross. And Carolyn has just come out of a bad breakup she was dating a co-worker, and so her work situation became intolerable. So she quit working, and she's okay financially, but she just didn't want to sit around and do anything. And so she decides to take this. She had lost her mom to cancer a little while back, and she just feels drawn to this ad that Autumn has posted. And she decides to, what the heck, if it doesn't work out, she can always quit. So she answers the ad, and, surprise, surprise, they're both lesbians. And so, and as the two of them, she sees Autumn at her very worst. I mean, because chemotherapy is hard, and when you're sick and, you're too sick to take a shower and your hair's dirty and sticking up everywhere and you're throwing up and you lose weight, and it's not the best side of you, and somebody still, starts falling in love with you, you gotta think that's pretty genuine, but then Carolyn, as she's been through this with her mother, and she's suffered loss before, so, she has this moment of, what if, I actually let myself fall for Autumn, and she doesn't survive, and I'm going to hurt again, even more, So she's in a sort of a crisis too, and so the story is them working through this, and who is, Autumn has to accept that she can love again, and she can risk, what if she falls in love, and then she doesn't want Carolyn to have to, suffer through, last days, if there are last days. And so they,
there's a big decision.
Both of them have to find the courage to just say what's going to happen is going to happen, unless, be together. And so it's a story of courage too, very courage, two very strong women that reach very deep and find that courage. And so it's very inspiring as well.
It definitely sounds like it is. Yeah, that touches your heart, that particular scenario, I'm sure. Georgia, you're last. What about Death Overdue? What's the basic plot?
Death Overdue is a murder mystery, which made me very happy. I forgot to mention that it is the 5th in the series. But you can read it. I mean, I haven't read any of the other ones. I kind of jumped into the middle, and I did not feel lost. I didn't feel like I was missing things. So you can read this as a standalone. Heath Barrington, the detective, he is going about his business, and he gets a letter that says, "I know what you are," and a meeting date. And so he goes to meet this guy who has loose ties to his family in the past. And this man basically blackmails him and says, I know that you're seeing this guy. I know that you're, one of those woo-woos that nobody likes. And if I let this get out. You're going to get fired. You're going to lose everything. So you're going to give me money. And Heath doesn't really have a whole lot of options. So he leaves and tells the guy he'll get back to him. And he goes and gets drunk. And I love that he gets drunk on martinis. He doesn't go have beer or shots. He gets drunk on extra dirty martinis, which I loved. And then he goes back to the apartment to see this guy again, but we don't see any of that because he's like, this is told in first person, and Heath gets so drunk that he doesn't remember a lot of it. And you can probably see where this is going. The next day, the blackmailer is dead. So we're following Heath while A, he's trying to figure out who did it, and B, also a little nervous that he might have done it himself.
Oh no!
Yeah, because he can't remember. Too many martinis. He cannot remember lots and lots and lots of his evening.
He'll get you every time, the martini.
Oh boy, I to make us want to figure out what happens on that. I'm going to stay with you for a second, Georgia, and just real quick, what's your favorite aspect of the book? It can be a plot point, it can be the humor level, whatever. What's your favorite part of this book?
I have to say, and I don't know if I can do this because I need my friend Nikki, but because it's set in the 40s, the entire time I read the book, everything I heard was like this, like there's a keys, this guy is dead now, you see, and like I heard like Humphrey Bogart talking the whole time, but it was really set like that. Like it's so well set that I felt like I was there, and that's how I read it in my head. I think whoever does the audiobook needs to narrate it that way.
I think we're all going to read it like that now. So, Brad, what was your favorite part of 3 Alarm?
Well, as I said, there's an action scene in every one, but I like the second one best. And I won't give away too much, but there's a big trauma with lots and lots and lots of mangled people.
At my own heart.
It's my favorite.
which allowed Erin to show the characters in action and also allowed her to show the romantic pair meeting in the midst of this tremendously emotionally wrought scene. So it was really fast paced and it was really interesting, and technically it was really well done. And it was a really unique way to bring characters together.
For sure. I think that's got my attention right off the bat. Kris, favorite part of Serenity?
Favorite part is probably, I really enjoyed Kit, one of the main characters. It's Kit and Thea, and I would be friends with Kit. Somebody like Kit, she was so real and just very likable. And you read it, you're like, I can't believe that this person really had a problem and went down this heroin hole. And I guess that's what you can call it, but she was very real and very likable and very genuine, and I think it's very interesting. It shows that anybody can have flaws. Anybody it could be a victim to this, to going down the heroin hole or alcohol hole or whatever hole you're going to go down. It's very real. So I looked at it like I really enjoyed these two characters because they were my friends during the whole book. They were my friends. I was rooting for them, and even the side characters. There's a cousin, Josh, who's very supportive of Kit, and then there's a teenager that's she's kind of like sort of involved in this, and you're kind of like, oh, please don't let her have a heroin addiction, and then that's not the case. And I didn't mean to spoil that. Maybe it is the case. But it's just the real people. I really enjoyed the real people because I believe them. They had flaws, they had problems, they had a lot of love, and they were just very real people, and I appreciated that. And so that was probably my favorite part because I connected the most with them.
I think that's a huge compliment when you say the characters were my friends. Yeah.
I want to text Kit right now and ask her how's it going. How are you doing? You still staying off the drugs?
Yeah.
Laid off the drugs.
Are laid off the drugs? Are you in the heroin hole? Or are you not in the heroin hole? Exactly.
All right, D. Jackson, what's your favorite part of The Last Days of Autumn? Favorite aspect of the book?
I think it was uplifting at the end, and I kind of needed that. I needed a happy ending.
Yeah. We all do at certain points. I think
Right.
that's a great.
That's why I read romance books anyway, because the job that I have, I see a lot of stuff that's not happy, and it's you need that happy ending. You need to have your faith restored that some things are going to work out okay, and we're going to be okay, And when this whole coronavirus, pandemic, a lot of people are afraid that we're not going to be okay, but we are. We're going to be okay. We'll figure this out. We'll be okay.
Yeah, yeah, and we need that safety.
That's
net.
what I like about this.
I think that's great. I think that's a great point. Allie, favorite aspect of your book?
I think one of my favorite things was her Pierce's nickname for Cassidy was Dr. McSmoke Show. That's my favorite thing.
That's
I
pretty
think
great.
we've all, like I said, we've all kind of been there, building romance. And, she's dating someone who obviously her name is Dr. McSmoke Show, so she's really pretty, and so you're kind of trying to act cool, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you're just an idiot. So, I think it kind of showed you could relate to these people. It's kind of like what Kris said. You feel like they're your friends, and you've been there, and everybody's going through heartbreak, and everybody's going through the new romance and kind of building, and you're trying to build something for the future. So you can relate through the whole thing in the book, and it's like, some secrets are bigger than others, and how do you work that out so that you do get to that happy ending? And like I said, she did a really good job on that.
Dr. McSmoke Show, we're keeping that. and lastly, like Carsen, what for Moon Fever, what was your favorite aspect of that book?
Two things. One, and they're related. The first one is the world building. It felt very very intricate, but also very real. Like I felt like I could see everything, and I felt like it could be. I think this is set in what we used to be in London, and used to be.
Before the goblins came.
Yeah, there's goblins and gargoyles, but I think I read a review that captured it perfectly. It said you felt like you could just be at the bakery and there'd be like a goblin and a gargoyle, and it'd be so we're all buying bakery, everything's fine. So,
I was never been to a bakery in New Orleans.
and my second favorite thing was part of that world building. Yeah, the New Orleans definitely. Was this the main character Danica has this pet, and it's called a chitterick. I'm probably not saying that right, but it's a made-up word, so there is no right. And it's like a cat with wings, and and it flies around and it chitters, and it says her name.
What does it sound like, Carsen? What does the chittering sound like?
And its name is Norma.
Oh,
It's so perfect. I want a chitterick.
that's
Now.
awesome. Carsen, I'm going to stick with you for a second because one of the questions that came in from one of the audience members right now is about your book specifically, and they're asking about Iliandrian's humor. Would you describe the book as more serious, humorous, dark humor? What would you say to that?
It's a great mix, but the humor, I think, gives a great amount of levity to what's going on in the book. So it's not, the humor itself is not dark.
Okay, so it's there as a nice balance. We have Norma.
I mean, Norma, the chitter,
Shit on it. And that's perfect. Now, a lot of these books contain either romance as the central plot line or as a secondary portion of the book. But let's talk about heat, because when people are picking out a book for themselves, and we have people who are listening for recommendations, that's something they want to know in advance. So if we were to say on a scale of 1 to 5 jalapenos, what's the heat level for the book that you read? And I'll start with Rad.
I thought about that because I saw your question. I would put it at a 3. There is love, there is emotion, there is sexual tension, and there is sex. The sex scenes are relatively short, but they are on the page, but not super graphic, which is pretty typical of Erin's. You know, Erin's pretty much a sweet romance writer, but she's, you know, she writes good sex.
Okay, so if you're an Erin Dutton fan, this is a little bit in line with some of her other work in terms of how the heat plays out. Carsen, heat level.
I'm going to say 3 to 4 peppers.
Right.
There's an established relationship, and so, you know, they know each other, and there's sex on the page for sure.
All right, 3 to 4 for Moon Fever. Allie, what would you say?
Give it a 4. Not only sex between the two main characters, but also the doctors from the previous book, who are also a very hot couple as well. So that's always good when it's, you know, stretched out through the. You don't have to wait for it because you have these other characters that have already had sex. Not waiting, you know.
Good point. So 4 for that book. D. Jackson, what's your heat level on Last Days of Autumn?
It's a slow burn. I would have to say, I think when they finally do get to it, I would give it a 3. But it is a slow burn. I mean, she's sick for most of the book, but when they finally do come together, I'd give it a 3.
Okay, 3 for that book. Georgia, Martinis, what do we say?
You know, heat level, I'm gonna go with a 2 because it's not really about that at all.
We got a mystery to solve.
Well, like, yes, and like Red said, there's intimacy. I mean, in the fact that they know each other, they've been together for a while. There's trust. There's a little flirting. There's no sex, and we only see them like together post coitus, I guess you'd say, once when they wake up in the morning in the same bed. But again, the story's not really about them. Their background to the mystery. So I'd say maybe a 2.
Okay, a 2 on that one. And lastly, Kris?
I would say maybe a 3.348 because, you know, it's there's a couple scenes where they almost go all the way, but she does definitely on the page. Sex is on the page. There's a lot of intimacy. There's a lot of conversations. So that kind of adds to it, and there's definitely sex. So I'm going to go with the 3.348.
Write that down, everybody, 3.348. And, you know, I had so many questions to get to, and unfortunately we didn't hit all of them, but we do have maybe 2 minutes left with it. It isn't a lot. So I want to finish by you telling our audience who should read this book. So if you could just give me one sentence about the type of person that this book would be great for so that we can match some people to some novels. I'll start with Carsen.
If you like urban fantasy, if you're a fan of Midnight Hunters, Sherry Lewis Wall, Michelle Larkin, I would read this book.
Okay, Allie.
If you're stuck inside your house and you need a really good romance, and you're tired of talking to people that you're stuck in your house with, this is the book for you.
All right, Kris, one sentence. Who should read it?
Anyone who likes angst and realism in their books with heat. 3.348 heat.
Okay, Georgia, who should read your book?
I would say if you are a mystery lover, if you want to solve the mystery along with the main character, this book is for you. I am happy to say that I did not figure out who did it.
Oh.
I read a lot of this kind of stuff, a lot of mystery, a lot of thrillers. I got it wrong, so.
All right.
Good job, David. Good job.
D. Jackson Leigh, who should read it?
If you like to read books about people that face obstacles and found a way to overcome them, it's usually that's a general theme that in Donna K. Ford's books, and this one is the same. People that face obstacles but are able to overcome them.
Perfect summary right there. And lastly, Rad, who should read this book?
If you like Trauma Alert, you'll like this one.
All right. Perfect. Well said. I want to thank everybody for letting us hear a little bit about these fantastic books. I've seen lots of comments in the chat about, hey, I'm picking this one up or I'm putting this one in my queue right now. Yep. So more books out there, more readers, which is what we want to have happen. And so everybody have a great night. We have more to come for the Bookathon, so stay tuned. I think we have some readings coming up, yes?
Yes, we do.
Oh, exciting. So, did you want to say
Thank
something?
you, Melissa.
Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you, Melissa.
Melissa.
Thanks, everybody.
Great night,
Awesome
guys.
job.
Bye.